Thank you. Excellent. What is one or two painful historical events that you believe we should remember and why?
Okay, so this is where, I'm gonna take a kind of different approach with this.
Good.
And I think that one of the most painful events in the history of America, and then as it includes, African Americans, is in the 1850s and the Dred Scott decision. Because the Dred Scott Supreme Court decision basically said that African Americans were not citizens, according to the definition of the word citizen in the Constitution of the United States, which was very significant because I see the waves or the repercussions of that right up until today, February 19th, 2020, when it comes to citizenship. I mean, if you even look at the quotes of Malcolm X, he said, if you're a citizen, then you don't have to fight for civil rights because that's already given to you. But if you're fighting for civil rights, then it means you're not a citizen. And so the Dred Scott decision, which basically upheld to say that African Americans were not citizens according to the Constitution, and then to kind of piggyback on that to say then the number two, historical event that's painful after that is you had the 13th Amendment after the Civil War that, said slavery was abolished. It said involuntary servitude, then semicolon, except if you're, convicted of a felony, which would take us down a whole nother, trail. But then the 14th Amendment, which is the protective clause, which says that, every citizen has rights, and it defines a citizen as a person who's naturalized or who's born here. The intention on paper was to include the then emancipated slaves. But if you look at the history in court cases of how the 14th Amendment was used, the first time in out where you live out by, the Santa Clara County versus the Southern Pacific Railroad case, when it was used in that case, the way that got used was, and that was in 1888, it was used to define a corporation as a person. So see, people today look at the Citizens United case as being the first one of that. It was really 1888. And so the 14th Amendment has been used over 200 times to validate the citizenship or personhood of corporations, but only 19 times for an African American or a person of color as citizenship. So it's really been used as that. And so I see that as the most painful historical fact, because when we sit and we commemorate, African American history, we're looking at, as we said, the contribution of the citizens of America, when in fact, even though the law changed that with the 14th Amendment, it hasn't been that in practice. Because from my work in Philadelphia in pastoring and with the Community Development Corporation, even at the Rescue Mission, it used to be said that there were two Americas, but really there's three. There's, what I call the dominant culture, and then there are certain African Americans and people of color who've made it to you might call working class or middle class. But then there's what Eugene Robinson wrote in a book, Left Behind. He talks about those who did not weren't able to take advantage of the civil rights movement and job opportunities. And they've been left in generational poverty, generational dysfunction in the inner cities. They live in a completely different America whereby they don't really, in their day-to-day, moment-to-moment daily living, they don't receive the benefits of citizenship, nor are they policed or in the court system or in any of our systems really treated like real citizens. So that's why I go back to 1850 in that case, and even with the 14th Amendment and how it's been applied, and then all the way through, because that's what Jim Crow was secondary citizenship. And I think that that's the issue, not just with African Americans, but if you look at our culture today, when it comes to immigration and talking about citizenship and the push to try to limit people from coming here and having children so that they don't become, citizens from being born here. So I think that citizenship is a very key theme. And so that's what kind of, I would say, is and you know me, I always over answer a question, I guess. But that's the piece there for me, is the most painful thing. Yeah.
Well, and again, as you're speaking to these matters, it just highlights once again such themes as